All right, everyone, and welcome to Sharing with Shellshock. I am your host, ShellshockPrime, and right now it is time for the next episode, our love for platformers. Joining me tonight, we actually have two guests. First, we have OneOneTwo, and we also got OddHour. Nice to see the both of you. How are you both doing tonight? OneOneTwo, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Today's actually been admittedly a slow day, as I said before we started streaming. So this is very exciting for me because platformers are like my bread and butter genre. So talking about them on a podcast like this is always a pleasure.
Yes. What about you, OddHour?
I'm doing good. Had a lot of driving today. Drove all around Brooklyn and whatnot. But I mean, I love I'm very excited to talk gaming in general, platformers especially, because I grew up on them and I still play them regularly. So this is really exciting.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, because for me, platformers, that was actually the very first video game genre that I've ever actually played, because my first game ever was Super Mario Brothers. So I'll talk more about that and other stuff in a minute. But first, since you've been a guest before, OneOneTwo, on the very first episode, remind everybody, what type of content do you do?
So most of the live stream content that I do is about 100%ing action games. That's sort of my bread and butter, as I said, type of content. I try to play games as expertly as possible. Sometimes well, sometimes not. But I always have fun doing it, and I always love showing every corner of these sort of high octane action games.
Oh yeah, totally. You do a lot of really good content, between working on whatever it's games, for example, Mega Man games, or you were doing stuff like Strider. Sometimes you even delve into RPGs like Chrono Trigger, for example.
For sure, I like playing, even though I do mostly play action games, I do like delving into some other genres. For example, as you said, Chrono Trigger was one of them. I played Golf with Your Friends just because I thought the game was pretty cool. Or some non-traditional games like Just Shapes and Beats, which is more of a rhythm game. If it has cool visuals and a very complex gameplay style, or just is interesting, I'll probably give it a shot.
All right, sounds fair. Okay, OddHour, what type of content do you do, since this is the first time you're on this show?
Yeah, I'm a variety streamer. I'm a variety creator. I do a bunch of different stuff. I say I'll play any game once, and that's true. I love playing a bunch of different things. I like to keep things fresh. Variety is the spice of life. So, and we've been playing a ton of Fortnite lately. We've been playing some Roblox here and there. Overwatch 2 just dropped, so we've been picking that up. There are some games that I play pretty regularly, and I'm always open to try something.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, because I see you do a lot of stuff, and I know there have been times where we played Mario Party together in the past, which that was actually a great session that we had.
It was.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we get to play some Mario Party in the future.
Who ended up winning that?
I think it was.
That's a good question.
I don't remember. It was a year and a half ago, but because I know Mike was the one that was hosting those sessions, and I don't remember who won it, but I remember it being a very insane game.
I remember it wasn't me. That's for sure. I came in sixth.
I think I don't know if I came in second in that one, but I know that one I did well, but I didn't win. That's for sure. It probably might have been Matt that won. I think it was Matt.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Because it was the both of us, and then it was Matt and also Hito with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, full lobby then. Wow.
Yeah, and Mike was basically the one that was hosting us through Parsec in Mario Party 1. I don't remember what board it was, but it was still a great game. But we can talk about Mario Party in a future episode, but right now, this is all about platformers, and we definitely have things to discuss in regards to platformers right now, which involves Mario. It obviously does, and hence the fact that I'm wearing this Mario shirt, so of course I'm going to be talking about him. But before I talk about my experiences with them, OneOneTwo, what are your earliest platformers that you recall playing?
So the very first game that I ever played, period, was Super Mario 64. And it's still a game that I hold in incredibly high regard. I personally think it's one of the best games ever made, just because of how it revolutionized 3D gaming in general. And though I mostly stick to 2D games, I think that without Mario 64, gaming wouldn't be what it is today. And every 3D Mario game really does bring something to the table, which is why a lot of my earlier platformers were Mario games. Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, Galaxy, Super Mario All-Stars was a big one that I played a lot back in the day. But of course, also, the other big platforming game that I played was Mega Man.
Yes.
Mega Man is still my favorite franchise of all time, and it still holds a very special place in my heart, hence the hat and Mega Man X4 shirt. And I truly think that both franchises really showed gaming how you can do different types of games cater to different audiences. Because Mario in general is much more of a pick up and play, anyone can play this game, sort of beginner level platformer with still a lot of depth, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely more of a casual game comparatively, whereas Mega Man is a lot more hardcore and a lot more focused on depth and replayability. And I feel that both series truly have a lot to offer. And there's a lot of other platformers I started off with, but like Super Mario 64, and I think Mega Man Anniversary Collection was the first Mega Man game I played. Were like the two earliest ones that I think had the most profound impact.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, because when it comes to Mega Man, the thing about those games is the fact that I always look at them at like knowing exactly where I need to go. And it took years for me to finally discover what I really needed to do in those games, and eventually it got to a point where, like, once I knew, like, just knowing the boss weaknesses and all that, the actual order I need to go, I just could not get enough of playing them. But that's just basically that.
I think that's one of the best strengths of Mega Man, especially, is how replayable it is. It's one of those games where it's really meant to be played over and over and over again, so that each time you play, you can see yourself improve. You're not dying in the same spots you were before.
Yeah.
You're dying less, you're going faster, and you're gaining more knowledge of the levels. And I think that sort of replay value is what has kept this series alive for, almost 35 years now. I still cannot believe it's a 35-year-old franchise.
Yep. All right, so OddHour, what about you? What were your earliest platformers you remember playing?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, to be fair, I'm very biased because my mom and dad played Mario on the NES when I was in the womb. So like I was exposed to Mario very early on. So of course I popped out and they stuck a controller man. I played NES, I played Mario 1, Mario 2. My favorite game of all time is also my dad's favorite game of all time. It's Super Mario Brothers 3. So
Nice.
very early on I was playing that. I was a baby, of course. I was a baby at one point. I had an older sister, so she was always player one. And then we came to one-player games like Mario 64, which I was born the same year that the N64 and Mario 64 dropped. I would backseat. I would be like, no, you should go there. You should go to that room. Well, what does that do if you do that thing? So like, the first one I played myself, probably Mario 3. I remember my very first panic attack in my life. I made it to the final fight in Mario 3, and I lost it. I could not handle all the adrenaline. I don't even remember how old I was. I was losing it. They had to put me in like my baby bed or whatever, just to, like, calm me down. Be like, it's just a game. It's not that serious. But like, I love that game so much. So I think by default, I don't know the actual answer. I just know that very early on, there was like a seamless transition from me watching my parents play, watching my sister play, to me holding the controller. So Mario 64 was there. A little while later, I picked up Banjo-Kazooie. Never really played Mega Man until like YouTube era, because Brental Floss dropped like Mega Man 2 with lyrics. Like, that looks fun. I gotta try that out. This looks like if I'm gonna be singing that song while I get to that level and whatnot. Yeah. So like, Mega Man came a little bit later, and I like Mega Man. I realized that platformers were pretty much everything I played. I didn't really play anything out of that genre until like maybe the same time, like Xbox 360. I really wanted to play Marvel Ultimate Alliance, but like, my entire life, I didn't own a Genesis. I was a huge Nintendo fan growing up, just because my parents didn't know there was anything but Nintendo. So Genesis and Sonic and all that stuff came later when I went to a friend's house. So then I would play like the McDonald's platforming game where you play as Ronald McDonald jumping around clouds and whatnot. Like,
yeah, that game.
Yeah. I remember playing that stuff, but of course not grasping it because I was a kid. I didn't have that. I still don't have that high level concept of, this is what I should do to beat a game. I just run around doing nothing most of the time. But Yeah, Mario. Like Mario 3 specifically was probably the first platformer I picked up.
Yeah.
And then Mario 64 dropped, and Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie. A lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, totally. So for my experiences with platformers, like the very first game I ever played was Super Mario Brothers, which was in a cartridge that also contained Duck Hunt. You had both. Yeah, both games had the action set for the NES. But we played a lot of. I played a lot of Mario Brothers back when I was a kid, like Super Mario Brothers. My parents were actually playing the game, despite the fact that they don't really play video games that much. Like, my mom played a few stuff, but she's never into the hobby whatsoever. But for me, because my older brother got me and the family an NES, my younger brother was very small at the time. Like, he didn't really get to play video games until a little bit later. But for me, Super Mario Brothers, that was my first. I, for whatever reason, never owned Super Mario Brothers 2. I don't know why we never owned it. We owned Mario 3, but never 2 for some reason. We actually had 3 copies of Mario 3 because my older brother got us the first copy. The second one, my dad randomly found at work. And the third copy, we had to replace the NES because like the cables was just like not working. And it came with Mario 3, which I remember just reading the manual, like seeing everything. And they had to block out, I believe it was Darkland, what they called it, like the last area. I forgot what they called the Japanese version. They had different names, but I think
it was just Castle of Koopa.
And Castle of Koopa. But what I remember was that just seeing that, I was like, man, I wish I could just go there. Like, I was very small. I was like 5 when I was actually playing Mario 3, and I didn't beat the game when I was a kid. I didn't beat it till like when I was playing it on the Game Boy Advance, actually, with the Mario Advance series. But I remember, like, I think the part where I would always die at usually would be in somewhere in either the ice area or where everything is like with pipes. I could never make it to I could never make it to Castle Koopa. I would only watch my cousin beat the game because like my cousin was like back then he was like, I would say he was like one of the best at the time. I thought he was the best because like whenever I see other people play, they were in a similar skill level as me, but my cousin was basically just really that good. He was like next level at the time. So I learned a lot from him, and I played platformers. I played Mega Man as well, Mega Man 3 being like the first one for me, which was actually like one of my uncles just gave that to us, and I didn't understand it when I was like 8 years old. I did not understand Mega Man 3. I actually did not beat my first Mega Man. Like the first Mega Man game I did not beat was like until the Sega Saturn era, and that was Mega Man X4. But
so
yeah,
I have to ask then, since as a kid you really wanted to go to Darkland, what was your reaction to finding out about the warp whistles then? Since that is how you do that.
Warp whistles. Well, I did not find them on my own when I was a kid. My cousin would always do all the tricks, but I remember watching this one video when I was a kid, or actually when I was a teenager, and this was pre-YouTube. Like, YouTube did not exist back then.
Jeez.
And someone, like, I was at school, someone actually had a video in their CD of Super Mario Brothers beaten in 11 minutes. I was impressed. Like, I was absolutely impressed. Like, it was me and the rest of, like, my classmates just watching, and we were just, like, in awe. Because, like, one of the classrooms, they had an NES that had Mario 3. They had a couple of other games. But Mario 3 was the absolute, like, big one on NES. Like, I like Kirby. I like Donkey Kong. Like, for me, like, I remember the first time I switched from Nintendo to a different platformer was, like, a different platform in general was, like, Sega Genesis. I got a Sega Genesis before I got a Super Nintendo, and mainly because I wanted to play Sonic. And Sonic 2 was my first Sonic game. I absolutely loved it. I loved it a lot, but it took months for me to beat the game. I've beaten Sonic 3 before Sonic & Knuckles came out. I beat Sonic 3 because that was actually the first game I ever got day one, on Groundhog Day 94. Like after school, like because I was begging my parents to buy that game for us, and they did. So my brother and I would play it, but at the time I had no idea that it was only half a game, and that the other half was going to come out later in the year. So Sonic 3 was easily like a game that I just could not get enough of, and because we already had Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, my cousin at one point came over and bought us Sonic 1 so that we can go back to play that. And
that must have been an interesting experience going from 2 and 3 back to 1, because you lose a lot of stuff going backwards like that.
I didn't mind when I was a kid because I was like 7, didn't turn 8 yet, but so I didn't really mind. My younger brother, however, didn't seem to mind either. Like, I had a couple other platformers. There was, like, a Mickey Mouse game on there. There was Castle of Illusion. I had that game as a kid. I also had Quackshot, which is the Donald Duck game, which both of those games were actually made by Sega, and both are really good games. But I play platformers. I would play other genres, but platformers were always, like, a go-to. Always easy for me to play, and a lot of fun to go through, except for the ones that were very bad. Some games that I had no idea were really bad at the time until much later. But even though I did not get an N64 until much later, I remember back in 96, I went to a Toys R Us and they had a demo kiosk for N64, which was where I actually got to play a little bit of Super Mario 64 for the first time. And wow, that was an experience. And yet, I did not jump to get an N64 right away. Like after Saturn, like the next platform I got was PlayStation. Got N64 later, but for me, I feel as if that I didn't really get into 3D platformers as much until the PlayStation. Like I played some of the more random ones. Actually didn't play Crash Bandicoot games till later, and even then, I never finished any of them. I think the first platformer that I played that I owned on PlayStation 1 was Toy Story 2. But I never beat it, but my brother did. My brother beat it. It was a Christmas gift. And for a while, we didn't really get too far because of the fact that we did not have a memory card until a little bit later. So once we got the memory card, then my brother was going through so he could beat the game. But it was fun. Then after that, it's like, I think I got into platformers more with the GameCube and PS2. PS2 and GameCube, I was also like experimenting other genres as well, trying out different things just to see exactly what else I'm gonna like. Like playing, because GameCube was where I first played Sonic Adventure 2. Like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Like I was gonna get a Dreamcast, but by the time that like we were saving up money for a Dreamcast, Sega ended up pulling support, and then they were going to go third party. So we went with GameCube instead. And my uncle, even though we got a GameCube, my uncle also got us a PS2. And PS2, man, like, yes, as Cutie Caitlin says, PS2 has so much variety. She is absolutely right on that. PS2 has a lot of variety. Like, there's a lot of platformers. Like, you got the Jack and Daxter series on that. You have, the Ratchet and Clank. Sly Cooper, it's platformer with some stealth, which I want to play that series at some point.
I like Sly Cooper. I recommend it.
Oh, Tomba! Yo, I love Tomba! I actually rented that for Blockbuster one time.
Tomba is so interesting because it's so different from Fujiwara's original IP that he came up with, Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah, Ghosts and Goblins, I first played the series on the Sega Genesis with Ghouls and Ghosts, but I still own a copy of Super Ghouls and Ghosts for Super Nintendo.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not selling that, by the way.
Don't. No, that game is worth a lot. You gotta hold on to that.
It's in my library for life. But yeah. But I will say, I did not get into Castlevania until around the time when like the Wii was a thing, and because the Wii was the very first home console I ever got day one, and then like around Christmas Day of 2006, Super Castlevania 4 came out alongside 4 other games. Like Mario 1 was also one of those games, but Super Castlevania 4 was actually the very first Castlevania game I've ever played, and playing the classic Castlevania games was just absolute fun. But for me, like, I think for Castlevania, I would say, like, out of the classic games, the ones I like the best are like 4 and Rondo of Blood. Bloodlines is also a good one too, but it's mainly 4 and Rondo of Blood that I think are the best ones. And I never got a chance to play the Klonoa series, but I am planning on fixing that in the future.
I was about to say, I actually just played the Fantasy Reverie series for the first time a couple months ago. I played it like a week after it came out. I streamed the whole game 100%. That series is really cool because there aren't that many 2.5D platformers out there. Yeah. Games that are in 2D but really twist and warp the perspective. So that was one of the few games to really take advantage of that. And it does it in such interesting and unique ways. It basically turns double jumping into an inherent game mechanic because you can't just jump twice. You have to have an enemy nearby to utilize that. And it's one of the most interesting ideas I've seen for a game. And it really works with the sort of perspective warping that Klonoa does. Yeah. And I would later go on to play all the other, I later played the Game Boy Advance games. I think the only one I haven't played yet is Heroes on the game, which is the RPG on the GBA. But Klonoa is a really cool series. I definitely recommend it to anyone who wants to play something, I don't want to say off the beaten path, but not as well known as most others. And speaking of the Wii, I actually wanted to touch on that for a second because the Wii was one of the most important consoles to me because of the Virtual Console. The Virtual Console, I truly feel, was what turned my gaming tastes into what they are today. That was my first taste of retro games, and I was hooked from that. I literally could not get enough of all the retro games on the Wii Virtual Console. And I think part of that is because the first Wii game I downloaded was Mega Man 9, which is not a retro game that came out in 2008, but it was retro-inspired, and it inspired me to play all of the other games on the service. Yeah. And I think that's where I gained my appreciation for a lot of other retro platformers. Because that's truly where I shine, I feel. Games like Ninja Gaiden, Contra, Blaster Master, Ghosts and Goblins. I don't even remember Strider is on there. I think it is.
It came very late.
Okay, there you go. But my point is that I feel like the Wii Virtual Console is one of the best ways to experience a ton of retro games.
Yes.
And whether they're platformers or not, and I truly feel that influenced my gaming repertoire and the way I play games forever. I will always be indebted to the Wii Virtual Console, especially, and later the Wii U and 3DS ones.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, the Wii Virtual Console saved my collection. My mom threw out my NES when I was a kid because we didn't have AV cables. It breaks my heart thinking about it today. I was like, it works, it turns on, but it's not on the TV. It's broken, whatever. But when the Wii was coming out, my parents are very much of the mindset of, it's old, get rid of it or give it away. So the N64, I had my N64 games because I still played it. And they were like, okay, you're getting a new Nintendo, we should get rid of the Nintendo 64. And I was like, wait, hold on. Because I'm pretty sure I heard rumors. I read one Game Informer magazine that said you can play Nintendo 64 games on the Wii. And I remember a photoshopped version of a Wii that had an N64 cartridge plugged into it. And I showed that to my parents, and I was like, look, I'm not getting rid of these games. I'm still going to play them on my Wii when I get it. 2 years after it drops, because I'm a child and I have no money. So I'm also indebted for a completely different reason to the Wii Virtual Console. Half of the stuff behind me is still here because someone photoshopped an image of a Wii playing an N64 game.
Well, you may not be able to do that, although I very wish you could, because that would be very funny. You can really, the Wii Virtual Console was very expansive.
There was.
Even besides NES, SNES, N64, the Genesis was on there. The TurboGrafx 16 was on there. I didn't even know that was a thing before the Wii Virtual Console.
Yeah, seriously.
Arcade stuff was on there. And there were a couple of other things, too, that I'm forgetting. Neo Geo was on there. I remember that.
Yes.
That's why I played, Metal Slug and Samurai Showdown.
Yeah, exactly.
That was so cool. The amount of variety on that console was insane from just that alone.
TurboGrafx. I'm honestly surprised TurboGrafx is not on Nintendo Switch, because like that would be like one way to play Castlevania Rondo of Blood, which is a great game. But yeah,
I'm trying to.
Yeah, Sega Master System was on there.
Graphics games.
Yeah, Sega Master System, because like you could play the 8-bit Sonic games on there.
Mhm.
There's the Alex Kidd games. There's a couple other games on there too. But for platformers in general, I will say that I remember like almost everybody wanted to make a platformer on NES, and to a degree both Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. There was some stuff on Game Boy. There's some hidden gems, like for example, like a puzzle platformer, like in a game like Donkey Kong 94, or if you want to play like the Mega Man games on the go, Donkey Kong Country games on the go, which they call Donkey Kong Land. Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins is a phenomenal game. The Kirby games, Wario Land, like they have Wario Land 1 on Game Boy, Wario Land 2 on Game Boy Color, as well as 3, and then you have 4 in GBA. Like, great stuff right there.
I especially want to give a lot of credit to games like Kirby's Dream Land and Super Mario Land 2, because they sort of showed the power of handheld gaming. One thing that really bothers me personally is when people dismiss handheld consoles as like lesser than like traditional consoles.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking comparing the Game Boy to the NES, for example. And sure, the Game Boy doesn't have as much power as an NES. Obviously, the Game Boy Color doesn't have as much power as the Super Nintendo, etc. But the limitations of those consoles really drove innovation, in my opinion, and allowed developers to do things that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And an example of that is like Kirby's Dream Land. I mean, Masahiro Sakurai has talked about this before, that he wanted Kirby to be a very accessible franchise. And I feel that putting it on the Game Boy, a console you can take anywhere, really helped with that and allowed a lot more people to get into a franchise like Kirby. Or, you mentioned the Mega Man games.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, the first 4 games hewed close to their NES counterparts, but they also provided some unique level design that they weren't able to do on the NES because of the different screen ratios.
Yeah.
And they were pretty clever with that, especially with games like Mega Man 5, where a lot of the levels are built around that small Game Boy screen, especially in the end game. One of my favorite levels in any platformer is the Wily Star in Mega Man 5, because it's very long, and I feel like it wouldn't have that same gravity space station. That was not intentional, but I guess it just came out that way. But I feel like it wouldn't have had that same gravity to it if it was on an NES, because it would have felt a lot shorter. And I think that sort of led to a lot of interesting ideas on the Game Boy.
So really quick, I didn't play a ton. I played Wario Land 2 a bunch, but my first Kirby game was Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, which I didn't know was a remake of Kirby's Adventure until like 4 years ago. Like I learned that very recently,
right?
Because I never played Kirby's Adventure. I was like, wait, I finally bought it. And I played it on the Wii Virtual Console, and I played it, and then I went back and I played Nightmare in Dreamland. I was like, wait, I just played this. Where did I play this?
Yeah.
Deja vu, I just been in this place before.
Yeah. All right. So the next topic that I want to bring up is, so for platformers in general, do you guys prefer 2D platformers or 3D platformers, or in some cases, do you prefer both? OneOneTwo, you first.
So I think I said this before, but I do vastly prefer 2D platformers, because even though 3D platformers do have that sort of scope that you can't get with 2D, just because there's the Z-axis, just that alone allows you to put more of a level into the game. I especially appreciate 2D platformers because of that limitation of only, X and Y axes. And I feel that allows developers to be very creative while still allowing it to be easy to control. One of my favorite things about 2D platformers is it's if you've played one 2D platformer, you will pick up on a few things that you can use in every 2D platformer. And I feel that allows developers to be very creative with the games they make. And also, I think 2D platformers in general tend to be faster, which is the type of gameplay style I prefer. And I'm not saying that's always true. There are definitely 3D platformers that are very fast-paced. I mean, Crash Bandicoot basically requires split-second reaction time half the time. But I feel like on the whole, my sort of faster, more analytical gameplay style works better with 2D games, at least in my opinion. But again, 3D platformers are amazing. Games like Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, Crash Bandicoot are revolutionary for a reason.
Yeah, of course. All right. What about you, OddHour?
I think I gotta go with both. I was thinking about it, and it's like you can't have one without the other. First of all, like having the simplicity of 2D and then making it complex as it grows, like what OneOneTwo said. Like it's really hard to pick one over the other for so many reasons. But like in terms of preference, again, like I'm a variety type of person. I need to be able to play both. I can't really like Mario 3 is my favorite game of all time, but I can't sit here and say that like, you know, Mario 64 doesn't deserve to be played because 2D is just better.
Yeah.
You know, I love just platforming in general in whatever form it takes. So like picking between 2D and 3D just isn't fair because there's just so much that you can do with both that I can't really pick one over the other. Like as hard as I try to weigh them, I really can't. Like it is way too even of a scale for me to be like, yeah, maybe this one. Nah, I gotta stay firm on both.
Yeah,
I respect that.
I completely respect that. For me, I will also be on the camp of both. I love 2D and 3D just as much as each other because both of them have a lot of fantastic games in general. Both have their strengths, both have some of their weaknesses as well in different aspects. But the more important thing for me is that I have a great time playing platformers of any kind, no matter which series they came from, no matter how they play, as long as it's fun for me. That's all that matters. But in terms... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I also want to give special mention to the games that sort of bend that line between 2D and 3D. We already mentioned Klonoa once, but there are a ton of other games that sort of infuse elements of both. Yeah. One of my favorite examples is games like Super Mario Odyssey, which literally have both.
Yes.
And that, sure, the majority of the game is a 3D platformer, but there are a lot of 2D segments that require you to sort of slow down and analyze what's coming next directly in front of you instead of at a 360-degree motion. Or you have games like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which have you going into the background and having you sort of play off of that more, I'm trying to think of the word to phrase this, I guess Z-axis perspective.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very cool when games have both and sort of infuse both design elements. It doesn't happen very often because it's hard to do properly, but when it works, it really works.
It does, yeah. For me, because I will say this in regards to 2D and 3D platformers in general, that I also enjoy the games that blend the two together. Like, for example, a game like Sonic Generations. Like, you have sections where you have 2D platform, like the 2D platform sections with classic Sonic to play as if you're playing a classic Sega Genesis style Sonic game, and then you have the 3D Sonic game, the 3D Sonic gameplay, which they were using the boost formula that started with Unleashed, and then they followed it up with Colors, and then Generations. They ended up just taking that to another level. That was wild. That was fun. And to me, Generations is right now my absolute favorite 3D Sonic game, even though it does have 2D elements as well. But it was just fun, like, especially for someone who was like a huge Sonic fan like I am. That game just had almost everything I wanted, but I was satisfied with the product. But it's like you have other games in general, like blending between the two, like Super Mario 3D World, for example.
Right. Blending
like 2D style Mario gameplay, 3D style Mario gameplay together. They were trying to bridge the gap with that one. It was a great game in general. I will say I like it better on Switch because of the quality of life features that they had. Like, for example, the gameplay is a lot faster. And
that speed is so much fun.
Yes.
You go so fast.
Like if you compare how it was on the Wii U versus how it is on Switch, and I played it online. I've actually streamed it online, did an online co-op, and for me, like for us, the online was actually pretty solid. Like we managed to get through, minus a few hiccups, but some of which were mostly like because of internet service provider more so than the Nintendo Switch Online. But we still had a great time. We still had fun. Like
I like a few examples that the chat brought up. By the way, I know I think it was Derek the Brony brought up a very good example of a game that does it very well and a game that does it very poorly, and that is Mega Man X7 does it very poorly because it tried to have it both ways, where it had literally both 2D and 3D segments. And spoiler alert, they both kind of stink because they're both slow and they both have a lot of unnecessary mechanics that make the game feel like you're covered in molasses.
Yeah.
Comparatively, Mega Man X8 is definitely a 2D game first and foremost, but it has that Klonoa style wrapping around the level that makes it feel very streamlined and fast. And I think that's a really good example.
Exactly.
Also Super Mario Galaxy is another very good example that
yes.
did the Odyssey thing.
Yes. Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 for me. Like,
absolutely.
Some of the best platforming ever. What happened?
2 or 1. Mario Galaxy 2 or 1, really quick.
2.
Oh, it's so hard though because they both. It's such a hard question because both of them do a lot of really interesting things together, and I feel like they're really two halves of a complete whole. I mean, there's Galaxy 2 essentially was originally designed as an expansion pack because they had so many ideas for the first one. So it's like picking your favorite child.
But let's be real, both are fantastic games. Let's be real.
Yeah, they're both some of the best games of all time. If I had to choose one, I ultimately think Galaxy 2's difficulty curve sort of elevates it just barely over the first one. Yeah. But again, like, they're both some of the best 3D platformers of all time.
Yeah.
So it's like picking a favorite child. That's so difficult.
You want a platformer that blends 2D and 3D sections in some aspects. This game I completely think is highly underrated. Originally it started off as a VR game, then it was brought to Xbox One, then Switch, and now it's on everything. And that game is New Super Lucky's Tale. Great game.
Ooh.
Highly recommend it. Me personally, I think it's better than the original Ukulele. It has 3D sections. It has 2D sections. And both of them are fun. I think it's a great game. I hope that they make a sequel to it at some point. It has a lot of cool ideas. Like you play as a fox. Like you come from a different world going into a new world. You have to I think you have to save your sister, but yeah, it's fun. I highly recommend if you have not played New Super Lucky's Tale. Highly recommend it. That studio that made Lucky is out of business now. Oh no, I
did hear about that. That was very sad because New Super, as you said, I agree. New Super Lucky's Tale is a really cool game. I especially liked how dynamic the levels were because they all had a different pizzazz to them, and I thought that was definitely its strongest point. I do think it was a little easy for my taste. I don't think I even died once until like the extra challenges, which admittedly were a little tough, but I think the game probably could have used a little bit more of a difficulty curve to elevate it.
Yeah.
But that's my personal opinion. I'm also like I play a lot of hard games, so that definitely colors my biases a bit.
Yeah. But yeah, highly recommend it. Like 3D games in general and 2D games, like for platformers, no matter which one they are, I'll play it as long as I'm gonna have a good time.
Yeah,
agreed.
Yeah. So the next thing I'll bring up is what, and this we'll probably spend a little more time on this one. What are your favorite platformers of all time? OneOneTwo?
I'm going to be honest, actually, because I'm going to talk for a long time about this. I think OddHour should go first on this one.
Okay.
Because I have a lot to say about my favorite games.
Okay, fair. OddHour, you go first.
Thank you for passing it. I'll try not to talk too much.
No, talk as long as you want, seriously, because I don't want to take away from what you're going to say here.
Gotcha. So favorite platformers of all time. Okay, so Mario 3, obviously favorite game of all time. That is way up there for a number of reasons. I feel like a lot of people will generally agree that 3 is the strongest in terms of 2D Marios. Again, that's up for debate, but that feels like the general consensus a lot of the time. Mario 64 is up there for sure. I love Mario 64. I have my calendar's always dated with the first time I ever beat it, so I celebrate that every year.
Yeah.
God. Crash Bandicoot Warped. Crash Bandicoot 3. So, like, I had a PlayStation 2, and that was a PS1 game. I never beat it for a really, really long time. I never even made it to the final boss because we had no way to save the game. So, like, I played it a ton, and me and my sister played it a bunch, and we never got that far. And whenever we were, like, done playing, we'd always have to start over. It sucked, but yeah, that was just the nature of it. Like, eventually when Insane Trilogy dropped, I finally beat the game, and I was like, yes. It's like Crash Warped is up there for sure. Banjo-Kazooie, I love Banjo-Kazooie, like, so much. I still think Mario 64 is better, but like Banjo-Kazooie really was like for a really long time was like a shining example of what platformers can be, like 3D platformers can be, and was like the standard in my opinion. Banjo-Tooie was good, but I don't think it was as good as Kazooie comparatively. Again, that's just me.
Yeah.
So Kazooie over Tooie for me. Crash Warped I mentioned. Wrath of Cortex for Crash Bandicoot 2, like I also really liked. That was really good for a while. Sonic Generations I think might be like the most enjoyable platforming game, 2D, 3D, any way you slice it. I really, really like Sonic Generations. It's one of those games that like I sit down to play it and I just want to beat it again because I don't want to put it down. So like that, I mean, I didn't really like tier these or list them or anything like that, but like I think off the top of my head, I'm sure I could sit here and spout off a bunch more. Like Mega Man 2, I didn't even think about Mega Man 2. Love Mega Man 2. So, you know, I've never actually beaten any of the classic Sonic games.
Really?
Yeah, never. I've played them all. I've never beaten them because I am bad at Sonic. I'm not very good at Sonic games. And I would love to be good at Sonic games. But then again, I also haven't sat down as like an adult and been like, yeah, I want to play Sonic, I want to beat it. So it's kind of like, it's still a fact that I haven't beaten a classic Sonic game. But I think if I sat down, I probably could now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to put that on like my favorite of all time. But Sonic Generations, I love that game. Played it to death. I think that's it. It's a pretty short list. I can of course go into details about each of them, but like I don't know, they all bring something different to the table. It feels like like Super Mario Sunshine crossed my mind, but in all honesty, it's like I've never even 100% in Mario Sunshine, and I really, really want to. Like I have a save file where I'm really close. But it like in terms of again, I'm a huge Mario fan. Mario's my everything. I once told my mom that I love Mario more than her. So like,
wow.
When I was a kid, I was like, you know, when kids always tell the truth. That's how you know it stung. So like Mario for me is always going to be like my gold standard for a number of reasons. It's always what I compare things to and like stuff like that. So like Sunshine for me, good game, just not really up there. I can't really say it's like my favorite. I really liked Odyssey. But I still don't think that would even be in my favorite. It's really tough. It's tough to be like, yeah, these are my favorites. Like, these I pick out of the bunch. But I think a very messy, but I think that's my list of favorite platformers of all time. You'll notice most of them are 3D.
Yes.
So maybe I should have picked 3D over 2D.
It's okay.
It's okay. I think that should show the weight of how much Mario 3 holds in my heart. That I was like, I listed 6 games, 5 of them are 3D, and I'm still like, yeah, I like both.
All right, that's a really good list. I do say that I hope that you get to play and beat the classic Sonic games someday.
I really want to. I bought Sonic 2 on my Xbox 360 because a friend of mine, his name's Lou, he was like, you need to play Sonic 2. Like right now, it's super cheap on the Xbox Arcade. Just pick it up.
Yeah.
Just pick it up right now. Give it a shot. And I liked it. I just never beat it.
Yeah. Before we go to you, OneOneTwo, Derek DeBroni actually asked a really interesting question. Do like to ask, did you know there were Crash Bandicoot clones on the PSX, like the PS1? Yes. In fact, there's actually one where you're playing as Pepsi Man. Pepsi Man is a Crash Bandicoot clone.
Oh no, not this again.
Yes. Oh, but that's not all. There is an M&M's platformer.
No, we're not talking about
that. Okay.
This is new.
Okay, for context, alright, so we were at a Sports and Play NYC meetup, and a good buddy of ours, CTK, he set up a Steam Deck so that we could actually watch people play. The name of the game is called M&M's Shellshock. It came out on PC, but the PC version has educational sections, which they took it out of the PS1 version. And we had a buddy of ours, Epic Man, play it. since he's a Crash Bandicoot fan, and yeah, he was getting a bit frustrated with that.
A bit?
Yeah, I'm putting it lightly.
A
a lot frustrated.
That was painful to watch. Jesus, you guys are evil for setting him up to that. I can't believe you guys.
That's the plan. That's how we do it. That's the way we do it. We live with this. Okay.
That was... And no, Caitlin, you cannot pay me to play those games. That's not happening.
Well, maybe if you do a charity, there could be an incentive.
No. I'm not doing that. That is how you do not design a platform. Jeez. Oh, that hurt my soul.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. So, 112, talk about your favorite platformers of all time. It's your turn now.
Right.
Go ahead.
All right. So I got a lot to say here, so I apologize if I talk too much.
That's fine.
Get this out of...
Go right ahead.
Fair enough.
The floor is yours.
Get this right out of the way. My favorite game of all time, point blank, if anyone asks me this, will always be Mega Man X. I truly think that is the greatest game I have ever played for just how replayable it is, how unique it is amongst the entire series and amongst platformers in general. I especially love the fact that the story is not complicated. You could probably explain it in a few sentences, but it's very emotional and impactful. Sure, there's the running joke about how Zero dies a bunch of times. I mean, he's died like 3 or 4 times at this point. But especially in that first game when you don't know about the 2 through 8 or whatever and all the spin-offs, it does actually hit you really hard. And I feel like the main moral message of Mega Man X is to learn from other people and to learn from other people's mistakes especially. And I feel that it drives that point home very, very well. That feeling of getting stronger, that feeling of getting faster, that feeling of just learning more as you play. I feel like no other game has really replicated that, and that's how I play video games. I play them to learn their mechanics as in depth as possible, and I feel that Mega Man X1 lends itself the best to that, and that is why it is my personal favorite game of all time. All right. On top of the level design being like perfect in my opinion, on top of the soundtrack being like world famous at this point. I mean, if you played Storm Eagle's stage in the crowd, I'm sure at least one person would pick up on it. That's how awesome this soundtrack is. And just the graphical style still sticking in my mind. Honestly, I think you could take any scene from Mega Man X, turn it into like a pixel art, and hang it on someone's wall. It's that beautiful of a game. That's my favorite game of all time. I mean, but that being said, really all the Mega Man games are spectacular. I think all of them, there's a few that are not great, but I don't think there's actually that many that are outright terrible. Besides, like, X6 is not great, X7 is not great, but I feel like most of the Mega Man games truly offer something that the others don't. And I feel that they all lend their place especially. Mega Man 9 is one of my other favorite games of all time, because I feel that it sort of started the retro revolution, as I like to call it. This idea of going back to 8 and 16-bit and taking from the past and modernizing it. Yes, there are games that did it before Mega Man 9. I know that La Mulana and Cave Story came out first. But I think Mega Man 9 was the first game to throw it into the mainstream in a way that people caught on to. Because Mega Man 9 topped the WiiWare charts for like a year or something crazy like that. It was one of the first games to really take hold of the Wii Virtual Console store, the WiiWare store. And I feel like it stuck out in a lot of players' minds. And I feel like that was sort of the catalyst to games like Shovel Knight, to games like Celeste, to games like, I'm trying to think of another like retro 2D platformer. Time Spinner is one of my favorites. I feel like that took a lot from games like Mega Man 9 and X. Mm-hmm. And I feel that Mega Man 9 was truly a catalyst for that, and 10 definitely picked up from there, but I feel like 9 was the most impactful in my opinion. Yeah. And also just the special weapons in that game were amazing. I love all 8 of those weapons. They're great. Going off from Mega Man, I mentioned Shovel Knight. That is also, in my opinion, one of the greatest games ever made.
I throw Shovel Knight in mine too. I forgot about it. Actually, I was one of those people who I don't want Shovel Knight to be in Smash at all. And then I played Shovel Knight. I was like, I will lose it if Shovel Knight is not in Smash.
Hey, he did get it as an assist trophy.
I'll take it. I saw it. I was like, yes, like nice. Sorry, please keep going.
No, it's okay, because I agree with you. I feel like Shovel Knight sort of took inspiration from all of my favorite, like, retro games from, like, the 80s and the 90s. Games like Castlevania 3 is my favorite Castlevania game, and it took a fair amount from that. Games like Ninja Gaiden, with its very fast-paced movement. If you stop for a second in Ninja Gaiden, you're dead, essentially. And games like Zelda 2, which is not necessarily a traditional 2D platformer, but that sort of exploratory element to it, of each level being very like varied and in depth, and also just the combat style of Zelda 2 really, I feel like was realized very well in Shovel Knight, and I'm talking about all the campaigns. Shovel of Hope is great. Spectre Torrent is just Mega Man X as Shovel Knight, and that's awesome. Spectre Knight's just Zero. Let's be real here. And King Knight playing like Wario, that I did not expect at all with this like shoulder bash type move. I thought that was awesome because Wario Land's such a unique franchise with how it's like the antithesis of Mario, and then it's all about, you know, like bashing into stuff and less about like, you know, oh, I have to be careful about what to jump on. And I feel like that was so interesting.
Yeah,
I really like a lot of what Shovel Knight did for taking from earlier games and molding it into its own. Another franchise that I will probably point to a lot is Strider.
Yes.
Strider is a very interesting game in that it was really the originator of the hack and slash genre, but as a 2D platformer, it is fast, it is furious, it is in your face, and it is all over the place. You go all over the world. And sure, there aren't that many Strider games, but every single one will forever stick out in my mind, especially the 2014 one, which I beat recently. That is an incredible game, and I feel like that's sort of if you like platformers, you need to play this type of game. Another one that I always point to is Blaster Master, which is definitely more of a Metroidvania or search action game, but Blaster Master Zero especially, taking a lot from Mega Man, but also from like every previous Blaster Master game. I love how it not only is a platformer, but it's a top-down action game, and it has that sort of two halves of a whole design philosophy that I really wish more games would do. It's very hard to do. I mean, X7 is an example of how not to do it, for example. But games like Blaster Master or ActRaiser, that's another really good example of two halves of a whole. And I talked about this on Twitter a bunch, but just I really feel that games that can mold platforming with something else are some of the most standout games in the genre, even if they aren't fully platformers. And the last game I'll mention for now, because otherwise I could literally go on forever about all my favorite games, is oh, sorry, I don't know who's calling me there. I don't know what that was, but one of my other favorite games, and this is one of the hardest games I've ever played, Contra Hardcore on the Sega Genesis. That game is one of the most impressive games I have ever played from a visual standpoint. It does so much with the Genesis cartridge, and I truly feel that no other game has really elevated the console's graphics and its music simultaneously while also being that fast-paced like Contra Hardcore has. It is a game that I can literally pick up any day of the week and have a blast with. I truly, like I said, it is one of the hardest games I've ever played, so it's definitely not for everyone, but if you love hardcore games, you definitely owe it to yourself to play Contra Hardcore. It's phenomenal. So I highly recommend most people to at least try some of the games I mentioned, like Mega Man X, Contra 3, Blaster Master, ActRaiser, Ninja Gaiden, and of course all the Mario games. I feel like that's really self-explanatory though. Mario's like the platformer franchise. It wouldn't exist without Mario and Donkey Kong. But yeah, those are some of my favorites.
All right. Sounds really good. Because there's a lot of great platformers all over the place. Lots of them I could just go on and just talk about. Like, favorites in general, obviously, the game that's on my shirt, Super Mario World. And I am on the camp in which I honestly feel like Super Mario World is a better game than Super Mario Bros. 3.
Oh,
yes.
That's fair. That's fair for a number of reasons. I fully acknowledge that 3, compared to other Mario games, is weak. I understand that because there's only so much you can do with that. But Mario World and the stuff that I'm sure Shell's going to talk about it right now, like the stuff that you can do in Mario World and all the different mechanics, just inherently on a base level before you even get into power-ups, I think that you can definitely make the argument and win that Mario World is better than 3, just in that regard alone. Yes. Surface level.
Oh, totally. Like, I can go on and on with so many different things. Like, for example, I honestly feel that, for starters, when you compare the cape to using the raccoon tail and the ears with the leaf. If you have to compare, I will say I think the cape gives you a lot more freedom, whereas the super leaf being able to use like the flight for the raccoon tail, that you're only limited to a certain amount unless you have the P-Wing, and even then the P-Wing only works once, regardless of whether like you finish a stage or you die. But with Mario World with the cape, you could be able to use the cape as long as you want, unless you get hit. But obviously, you don't get hit. But it's actually very broken because you could just actually finish a couple of stages, well, many stages, without even touching the ground, depending on how the level design is. So that's one. Another one I could say is I absolutely feel like running and jumping feels natural, a lot more natural here compared to 3. And I honestly feel as if that for 3, like obviously it builds upon like the first 2 Mario games, and I don't mean Mario 2 United States, like the one for the United States. I'm talking about 1 in Lost Levels, because that's their Mario 2 in Japan. Which, by the way, fuck that game. I think that's the worst 2D Mario platformer ever.
I do think it's worth acknowledging that although Lost Levels was very much sort of a troll game and that it tried to screw you in as many ways as possible, I do think that it was good in the sense that it showcased what too far is, if that makes sense. It showcased how to not be a troll, and I think that was worth it for that alone.
I'll say this: I'll take the blandest New Super Mario Bros. Game over it any day. Yeah,
fair enough. The poison mushroom especially is a cruel joke.
Although
I do find it funny.
But back to Mario World. So with Mario World, I feel as if that the controls are extremely, extremely refined. It works the best out of any of the 2D Mario games. Being able to look up, being able to like just throw a shell up to hit like blocks. Being able to control, like you're able to control the shell better. You have more freedom with that than you can in Super Mario 3. Sure, Mario 3 you could just toss a shell, but you have more to do in Mario World with it. And also Yoshi. The thing with Yoshi is that like he's a mechanic in which that you could just hop on. You can use him to like eat any of the enemies that he's able to eat. Sometimes if you eat one of the shells, you may actually have special powers. You may be able to fly. You may be able to spit fireballs. You may be able to stomp. Like for example, red shells will give you fireballs to spit. Blue shells will get you to fly, and yellow shells stomp. But that's not all. You have red Yoshis, blue Yoshis, and yellow Yoshis, in addition to the standard green Yoshis, which you could find at some point in the game. Like if you go to the Star Worlds, you can get them there. Not to mention the fact that the world map, you could actually travel within the world map at any point. And let's say if you leave one world to go to another, you could always go back. The game saves, because on the NES, none of the Mario games would save. Whereas Mario World was the first one that you could actually save. And that, and the fact that you can share lives with Luigi if you're playing it with another person.
That was cool, yeah.
They still retained the tag team mode. They wanted to do co-op in this game, but they were having issues with the game running with slowdown, so they decided against doing that, and instead just retained the tag team mode that they had in Super Mario Bros. 3. But you can now share lives. So let's say if player 1 has way more lives than player 2, you could be generous and just give them. But you could also be mean and take them away from others, but they would be forced to be left with 1 life left.
I remember that. That was hilarious.
Yes. And not only that, but I like the level variety. Sure, when it comes to the music, it's different variations of the same track, but I think that's pretty cool. And it's instead of just the same 2 tracks in the overworld, as well as like the swimming and all that, but you have like multiple tracks all over. And I honestly just had a lot more fun with Super Mario World over Super Mario Bros. 3. Both games are fantastic, but I think Super Mario World is definitely the better game. I will say Super Mario Bros. 3 is definitely up there for me, but obviously Mario World. The only other 2D Mario I would probably put on like my favorite list is probably New Super Mario Bros. U. I know. On the Switch, people are like, why do you port this game? It didn't need to be ported. It's still a great game. Regardless. I think out of all the New Super Mario Bros. Games, I think that's the best one. Whereas I think the weakest one is probably New Super Mario Bros. 2 on the 3DS. Which...
Oh, I think OddHour is offended by that one.
Okay. OddHour? What are you going to say?
My heart, my soul. Oh...
You have the coins, like the whole coin gimmick. New Super Mario, I will say, I got carried away with New Super Mario Bros. Wii when it came out because I actually beat the game in a single day. Like I just could not stop playing it. And then
it was really good.
Yeah, the one on the DS, great game, but the problem is that it kind of felt a little bit sterile in some aspects. Though it was the first 2D Mario in since Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins, great game by the way. It was the first one since then, since '92, going into 2006 on the DS, and I still had fun with it. I think that the ones that are worth playing are the console ones. The console ones are definitely the best ones. New Super Mario Bros. Wii, New Super Mario Bros. U. I'll talk about Sonic next. I have a much better experience with 2D Sonic than I did with 3D Sonic. Sonic 2 was my first. And it used to be my favorite Sonic platformer of all time. But something topped it, and I'll get to that soon.
I know what you're doing, what's coming there.
Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles were great games. But the thing is, you put two of them together. They were released separately. It was supposed to be one game. Still, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, fantastic. Though I still prefer Sonic 2 over Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And then
I am appreciative of how ambitious they were with Sonic 3 and Knuckles. You could tell they wanted to go a lot bigger than what Sonic 2 had. And the fact they had to split it into 2 cartridges in the first place means that they definitely were very ambitious. And they really met a lot of their ambition by doing it that way, and that's very impressive.
They did, yeah. I will say, the Sonic Advance games, I had fun with Sonic Advance 1. Advance 2, to be honest, not so much. I didn't really enjoy it, but never got to play Sonic Advance 3 all the way through. I only played maybe the first few levels, but I only tried it, but never actually bought the game.
I'd say give it a try. It's pretty good. I really liked a lot of the different characters in Sonic Advance 3. I thought that was sort of the best realization.
Too. Yeah.
All right. I'll definitely give it a go. Now, Sonic Rush, on the other hand, now that was a game. That was a fun game. That was one of my first 5 games on the DS. Sonic Rush. Wow. That game. Very, very good. You have 2 different stories. You have Sonic's story, and then you have Blaze the Cat, who was introduced in this game. Queen the Rabbit is the assistant for Blaze, while Tails is the obvious assistant for Sonic. But wow. Sonic Rush, wow, that was awesome. Didn't play a lot of Rush Adventure, though.
I was going to say, Sonic Rush is one of the fastest games I've played that still feels cohesive. I'm especially appreciative of how the level design is... Because Sonic is a very momentum-based platformer. It's about maintaining... It's not about necessarily gaining top speed, it's about maintaining top speed. And I feel like Sonic Rush was one of the best realizations of that.
Yes.
And it always impresses me with how smart that level design is.
Yeah. As they got the music, the composer was Hideyuki Nakamura. I can't pronounce his name, sorry. But the Jet Set Radio composer. The Jet Set Radio composer did the music for the game, and the music is fantastic. Oh my god, yo, Sonic Rush was fantastic. I didn't play Sonic Rush Adventure that much, sadly. I'll fix it at some point. Same thing with Sonic Colors DS. I did play the Wii Sonic Colors, and I played the remaster Sonic Colors, but for 3D Sonic, I'm going to say this right now. Adventure 1 is... I actually like Adventure 1 more than Adventure 2.
Agreed.
Oh, hold on. That's a hot take. Whoa.
Yeah, I know. But, no, a lot of people disagree with us on that one, but I must agree.
Yeah. the problem I have with Sonic Adventure 2 is, though I used to have a problem with the mech stages, though I kind of like them more now from the last time I played the game, which was last year, actually. But the treasure hunting, oh my god, that's the worst part of it. Like, it wasn't that great in Sonic Adventure 1, but it was worse in Sonic Adventure 2.
You know the level, you know TV Tropes is trope page, that one level? That's mad space for me. I think that is one of the worst levels I've ever played in any video game.
Mad space.
Actual garbage.
Oh my god, mad space.
The entire game, but Sonic Adventure 2 has, I think, a few too many of those that just are, at least to me, very unfun to play. Now, I admit a few games that I hold in high regard probably have those types of levels too, but I don't know. I feel like Adventure 1 had far less of that.
Yeah. Heroes, I did not really enjoy. I think Heroes was probably like the first like major Sonic game where I played it, and then like I went from being hyped to being extremely like disappointed. Like, there was just something about Sonic Heroes that just did not click for me. I don't remember if I've beaten Team Sonic's story in that one, but I just did not get into it like I did with the adventure games. But I don't know. Did not play Shadow. Did not play Sonic 06.
Ooh.
Shadow the Hedgehog.
Shadow the Hedgehog, yes.
Yeah. Then it's like Unleash. I need to actually play that game, but
it's very cool. I feel like people undervalue the nighttime levels in that game. They're actually pretty fun if you know what you're doing.
They're fun, but like a lot of the problems with them are like you're finding a complaint about these things. Like there's been a few times where I love Sonic Unleashed. Let me preface that right now. I truly, up until Generation, Sonic Unleashed was my favorite Sonic game. Right? Sonic Unleashed, like those night levels, they're fun, but if there are too many enemies on stage, the game comes to like a crawl. Like, you cannot excuse that. Like, there's so much going on stage to the point where Sonic's like that big move where he like, if it's moving at like 1 frame a minute, like how do you justify like the gripes with that game? I think are fair. I get it. I still love it. I still think that's one of the strongest Sonic games.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Yeah, you have to give it a shot.
Yeah,
Unleashed's daytime stages especially are some of the best realizations of the boost gameplay. They're so good and very, very fast.
Yes. I will definitely play Unleash. Like, it's actually one of the 3D Sonic games I really want to stream in the future. I think I will eventually stream Sonic Lost World, but Generations I want to actually do that as well. I love Generations. Colors, I enjoyed it. I think I liked it a lot more when it came out on the Wii, mainly because at the time, it was the first Sonic game in a while that was really, really good for me, since I didn't play Unleashed.
I know a lot of people felt that way.
But having played it again, it's not as good as I remember it, but it's still a fun game. Great music. But I think the
music's fantastic in Sonic Colors. It's one of my favorite game
Sonic
soundtracks.
Games, period, I feel like has phenomenal music. I can't think of a Sonic game off the top of my head that's like, eh.
Oh,
Mega Man and Sonic are like those two franchises where you know the music is going to be absolutely incredible, even if the game is awful.
The only Sonic game that I could say has terrible music is is Sonic Chronicles of Dark Brotherhood.
Oh yeah, no, that game.
But that's not a platformer. Yeah. So, but I will say best 3D Sonic game in my opinion, Generations. Best 2D Sonic game, Sonic Mania. Sonic Mania without a doubt. Like,
yeah, I'd have to agree.
Sonic Mania.
I forgot about Sonic Mania.
Top to bottom, great game. Absolutely. The best experience I've ever had with a 2D Sonic game. I've replayed that many times, and I will replay that as probably till the end of time, if anything. Because Sonic Mania, so good. Oh my god.
So good.
Like, they managed to get fans to work on this game. Came out 5 years ago. I got it on Switch, and it came out at the right time, like around the time the Switch came, like the Switch was still pretty new, and not to mention PS4 was hitting its stride. It was on PC, it was on Xbox, it was on everything. Sonic Mania. Wow. 5 years ago. What a time.
Is it fair to say that Sonic Mania was like Sonic's Mega Man 9 moment, where it went back to the original style and absolutely captured the magic of what made it so special while evolving it?
Yes. Oh my fucking god! Yes,
I'd say that's pretty fair because that game is phenomenal.
I have it on Switch. I have it on PC. Hell, I even bought the physical copy because I love the game so much.
Oh, you can't see it. You probably can't see it on the video, but I have the collector's edition of Sonic.
No, you can see it. It's in the, or at least I can see it. It's in the bottom right there.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, Sonic Mania has so many callbacks to different pieces of mediums for Sonic, referencing not only the games but also like shows. They reference a couple, like in some cases, like there's some comic references. But there's just so many great Sonic stuff. But Sonic Mania is the chef's kiss. I love it. And I think that if anybody wants to play a fantastic Sonic game, that I would say great top to bottom, that one. And I felt that the DLC did add to that. Like you have Ray and Mighty, two characters that have not been seen in years. Like for Mighty, he has not been seen since Knuckles Chaotix. And Ray was only ever appeared once, and that was in the Sega Sonic arcade game, which was never really had. It had like a limited release here, but it was in Japanese. But
they were really fun characters. I had not heard of them before Sonic Mania, but I think they sort of made the team that made Sonic Mania with Christian Whitehead and Pagoda Games and. What was it, Headcanon?
Headcanon, yeah.
Yes, so I like how they made them their own characters and gave them their own identity while still keeping to what made them special in the first place. That was very cool to see.
They fit in very well. Like, you have so many other platformers in general that I like. Like, the only other series I'm going to be gushing about more than anything, like, is Mega Man. Mega Man, for me, like, meant so much. Like, Mega Man, like, in regards to classic games, like, I will say, I know people are going to say, is Mega Man 2 your favorite in the classic series? And it's like, no, it's not. That actually goes to Mega Man 10. Mega Man 10 is my favorite in the classic series.
The other retro revival.
But I will say that on NES, 2 is the best, with 3 being like behind it, and Mega Man 5 is like third place. The weakest one on the NES games, or actually I think the weakest in the classic series is probably Mega Man 1. Not a bad game, but it's just everything else is better.
You can definitely tell that it aged a bit with, like, besides the scoring system, there's a lot of design philosophies that sort of became outdated with 2, like, you know, knockback can still knock you into spikes and kill you in one hit, or the fact that you need the magnet beam to progress, which is why it's so weird that Mighty Number 9 took a lot from Mega Man 1. You'd think that it would learn from a lot of the later games, but it didn't, but like, that's a whole other topic.
But, like, for me, Mega Man, like the Mega Man series, I love the classic series, but I also enjoy the X series. The X series, specifically, my favorite one is Mega Man X4, with Mega Man X1 being a very close second. Great games. Mega Man X1 is a game that I actually want to actively, like, if I ever decide to do speedrunning, that's one of the games I want to do.
I can definitely help you there because I speedrun X1 all the time. I can, like, consistently beat the game in under an hour, so I'll definitely help you out with that.
Impressive, yeah.
I want to start learning new strategies. Like, I want to go different paths. I want to do the same thing in Mega Man 2. Like, Mega Man 2, like, people are starting with Flash Man instead of starting with Metal Man. Like, I want to start going with different paths, whichever one I think might be faster for me, whichever one would be the most practical. That's what I want to do. I still need to finish ZX. I need to get to ZX Admin at some point. I've been holding it off, but I got to do that.
Yes.
But I did finish.
I wanted to quickly bring up, I know we didn't bring up the Mega Man Zero and ZX series, but I also think the Zero and ZX series are phenomenal.
Yes.
Besides its incredible storytelling, the emphasis on melee combat truly makes it stand out amongst other platformers with how it combines, like, Devil May Cry style elements of like using 2 weapons in tandem in order to combo your enemies into oblivion. And I feel that its fast-paced gameplay really influenced a lot of what later platformers would become. 0-3 is one of the best games I've ever played, just based on how fast it is and how many weapons and how many tools you have. It's incredible.
Like, for the Zero series, if I have to pick one game that I think is the best one, it's 0-3. Not only do I think it's the best Mega Man Zero game, I also think it's one of the best games on the Game Boy Advance. Like, if I have to do a top 5, it's in my top 5.
I totally agree with you. I love how many moves you have in 0-3. I remember one of my colleagues like did like a whole chart, and at any one point, if you have all the EX skills and Ls, you can essentially have 20 moves at any time. That is bonkers. Like, I don't think I've ever played a game where you can do 20 moves at any time at anywhere. That is incredible.
Oh yeah, totally. I will mention like a couple of other stuff in general. Other platformers that I want to bring up. Here's what I'll bring up. Banjo-Kazooie is one I want to bring up because I have played that game for the first time back in 2001. We rented it from Blockbuster. By the time that like I made it to like my brother made it to the last level, and then we were both playing it together. My brother made it to the last level, and guess what? We had to return it back to Blockbuster.
Oh, especially with Grunty's Furnace Fun, that's so...
So, I had to wait until earlier this year when it came out on the Nintendo Switch Online for N64, and that's where I beat the game for the first time. That game is easily one of the best games ever made. To me, it's one of the best N64 games, and I will say, Super Mario 64 is a fantastic game. I actually streamed it a couple years ago with the 3D All-Stars. 120% on that one. And that one is actually a great game on its own right. But I like Banjo-Kazooie more. I actually like Banjo-Kazooie more than Mario 64. But they're both great games.
I'll have to disagree with you there, but I respect your opinion.
Yeah.
Same. Like, I think Mario 64 is better than Banjo-Kazooie. Again, I said it and I still hold this true. Over Mario 64, I think Banjo-Kazooie was the gold standard for a really long time. It just goes down to preference.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. And as Kitty Caitlin says, she prefers Banjo more because it has actual personality. Yes, you're right. I never got to play Tui. If Tui ever hits NSO, I will play that. And actually...
worth playing.
It will definitely be a game I'll play.
I agree. It definitely... I think it's one of the prime examples of they made the game too big for its own good, and they were too over-ambitious. So that definitely hurts it quite a bit. But it is very impressive how large those levels are, because there's a lot to explore. And I know we're recording this, by the way, on October 16 for 2022 for reference. So, like, I'm sure... what I'm about to say next will be outdated, but I am very confident they will add Tui to the NSO. If they can get Kazooie on there, I'd be shocked. If they can get GoldenEye on there, I'd be shocked if Tui is not on NSO.
Yeah, at this point, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Like, I need to actually go back and play the Spyro games. I will say, and if I have to choose the gameplay between Crash and Spyro, I prefer Spyro. I think Spyro... I actually like the way Spyro plays more than than the Crash games. Like, honestly, the only Crash Bandicoot games I've ever beaten were both the original and the remakes of Crash Team Racing. Though, honestly, I think I had more fun with the original version of the game. The remake is good, but... yeah.
I do respect Spyro, especially for its, like, similar to Sonic, it's very momentum based in that you're dashing a lot, and I do appreciate that, and they were able to make the levels pretty large as a result. I will dissent in that. I personally prefer Crash Bandicoot. I will completely admit that the first game is very rough and has a lot of outdated level design, but as OddHour said, 2 and 3 especially have some very, very clever gimmicks, and I think that sort of elevates them amongst their other PS1 viewers.
Oh yeah, totally. There's other stuff I want to play as well. Like, again, I eventually want to play Jack, Spyro, and not Spyro, Jack, Ratchet, and also Sly Cooper. But out of other platformers I have played, Yooka-Laylee is a fun game, but I do think that New Super Lucky's Tale is a better game.
Agreed.
Other favorite platformers, Castlevania. I'm gonna bring up Castlevania real quick. Super Castlevania 4. Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Great games. Bloodlines is good. Castlevania 3 is good but fucking hard. And here's one that's gonna be random. the NES Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game is actually a platformer, but it has a swimming level. It's infamous for that. But I'm going to say this right now. The game is nowhere near as bad as people make it out to me. It has flaws. It has a lot of like design flaws that they never really actually tried to fix. They probably just passed it off. But it's still a game that I think should be played. Like, it's in the Cowabunga collection. It's the very first Ninja Turtles game. Because when they were making it, they actually it was the first Ninja Turtles anything in Japan, because it was mainly due to the fact that there was someone at Konami who was reading the original comics, but those were imported from the United States, and the show did not hit Japan till like later that year after the game came out. But the thing is, they wanted to do that, and they did it because it was mostly with the comics, but they did have to watch some of the episodes that they did watch from the United States. And guess what? It's a mishmash of both, but I think they rushed the game just to get it out, but they were mostly targeting the American market. It's still a game that is worth playing. Ghosts and Goblins series is also good.
Yes.
But the best one of the series is the one that came out last year. Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, which was initially a Switch exclusive, but now it's on everything. Highly recommend it.
I have to agree with you. I really feel like people sort of skipped Resurrection purely because of the art style. And I know what Fujiwara was going for. He was definitely going for a storybook aesthetic, first and foremost. And I know that definitely turned some people off. But Resurrection really sort of modernized this series. And I feel like that's very important because Ghosts and Goblins heavily relies on punishing players who are very impatient. And I know that a lot of players are, because most of them can't get past the first few levels. And I feel that Resurrection sort of, I don't want to say it curtailed the difficulty, because I actually think if you play Resurrection on the hardest difficulty, it's harder than every previous game in the series. But I think that especially by giving the player infinite lives and by allowing them to carry multiple weapons, I feel that it modernized the series in a way that allows more people to get into it without compromising its unrelenting difficulty, as it should. That game is famous for being hard. It should be hard, but it should be hard in a way that's fun and that's accessible to as many people as possible. And that's why I think I agree with you that Resurrection is the best in the series, and I wish more people gave it its due.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was like so many other great games in general, but yeah, Super Lucky Tale is great. Other stuff I would recommend, like that I would say is one of my favorites. Well, for me, I will say DuckTales. DuckTales on NES and the remake.
Haven't played that one, but I really should.
Hell,
that was one of those games I didn't own, but I played it at friends' houses and whatnot. It was fun.
Yeah. Hell, I'll even throw in some indie stuff. Like, I'm going to be throwing in, like, Shovel Knight. Celeste is definitely up there. The Messenger is another great game.
Oh, yes.
I absolutely enjoyed that. Though Cyber Shadow is not as much of a platformer, it's more of an action game. There's some platforming elements, but it's more action than platformer. Let's see. But yeah, DuckTales and the remakes were definitely great games.
I know you haven't played that many of them, but I quickly want to throw in Azure Striker Gunvolt. Actually, before we were recording this, I was actually watching some high-level Gunvolt gameplay because I was playing Gunvolt 3 intermittently.
Yeah.
And I love Gunvolt for how it sort of takes Mega Man's level design in its own direction. Because, I mean, and this is a whole other discussion about Inti Crates after, Capcom stopped making Mega Man games for 8 years. They had to make their own thing. But I feel like that's one of the most premium examples of taking a concept and doing your own thing with it. And I think that Gunvolt deserves a lot of respect for that. I know you haven't played a ton of them, Michelle. You said you played the first one, I believe? Which of the Gunvolt games did you play again? Because I don't want to spoil anything, because that's one of the best parts of the game, the story.
Oh, yeah. Wait. I've only just played Gunvolt 1.
First game. Okay, so I won't say anything more, but yeah, I just want to quickly throw in Gunvolt as to your indie point. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. The only other Gunvolt game I've beaten was Mighty Gunvolt Burst.
That game is amazing.
I've also played. Let's see, what else did I play? I know there were a couple of other ones that I could name. there was a game that came out on 360 back in like 2008 that I played from start to finish. It's called Braid. And that game had rewind. Like, you could be able to rewind whenever you make a mistake. I think that was like one of the first games that I remember playing that had rewind. Oh god, Katana Zero. Yes, that's a great game. Yes. Katana Zero.
I do want to make a forewarning that Katana Zero is very, very dark. That is not a game you should play if you are easily disturbed, because it gets very disturbing very quickly.
I'll agree to that.
If you can stomach it, one of the best hack and slash platformers of all time.
Yes. Just like Ninja Gaiden. Well, specifically Ninja Gaiden 2. Ninja Gaiden 1's hard. I never really finished 3. Like the NES ones.
He's got some rough edges, yeah.
Yeah. What else did I play? There's just so many. Like, it's just too many for me to list. But I will say, of the ones that I play, so many great games in general, and there's still more for me to play. I want to play some obscure ones like Ty the Tasmanian Tiger or Cow the Kangaroo but I'm gonna say this right now, Bubsy was never good.
I have to agree.
Yeah, Bubsy was never good.
I don't like hating on video game franchises because I don't like being negative, but that is one of the few video game franchises that I've played where I don't think I liked a single game in that series.
Yep.
Brutal.
Yeah. Which Bubsy?
Sorry. To anyone who likes Bubsy, I'm sorry, but I have to agree with
Bubsy. I've never played Bubsy, but even I'm like, oof.
I'll say this, like, because Derek DeBrody is asking which Bubsy isn't good, actually. The answer... None of them were good.
None of them.
But the worst one the worst one is 3D.
Oh, Bubsy 3D on PS1?
Yeah. Bubsy 3D. Like, oh my god. Like, so anyone who likes Bubsy, who? No, but I will say it's like I know like I shouldn't really dunk on like video game franchises, but Bubsy is just, I'm sorry, but Bubsy's just that one I just never felt had good games at all.
I'd have to agree.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the final topic, which is how much have platformers meant to you? I'm gonna have OddHour go first with this one.
Fair. Okay. What platformers mean to me? Everything. Like nothing short of everything. Like this playing games is my passion. Like I love doing it. I do it on camera, I do it off camera, and it really wouldn't start without my parents, my sister, like my whole family sitting down and playing games with me on a regular basis. Of course, they were Mario games, so like that's where everything started. But it's like without them and without playing those games when they were out, I don't even know what kind of person I would be. Like they shaped so much of my time, and that's gaming in general. But really, it's specific to platformers because platformers have been consistent throughout my entire life. Like starting Super Mario Brothers 3 with my dad. I remember in high school we started playing it again because of the Wii Virtual Console. I was like, he would always sit at his computer doing his own thing, and then one day I was like, Dad, do you want to play Super Mario Brothers 3 with me? And I was flabbergasted. He looks at me and goes, I'd love to. And we sat and we played the game. We played it a bunch. We played it so many times. And like platformers in general have just shaped so much of like who I've become. Like Super Mario 64 jumping to 3D and like beating it for the first time was like my first real accomplishment in like life, like school, whatever. But like beating Mario 64 by myself for the first time, because like I was the first person in my family to do it. My dad saw Mario 64 and was like, I this is too much for me. 2D games are nothing. Which fair, no problem. But like platforming has grown with me. It's been constant in my entire life. It's something I feel comfortable playing. I feel confident playing, and I love playing it with people. Like Nintendo Switch Online was such a big deal for me because it's like now I don't like I want people to come over and play video games with me, but now I can just be like, hey, are you free? Let's run Mario 3 really quick. Like I have save files with a bunch of different people. Like I have the 4 save slots. Like I have 3 different people I'm playing the game with.
Nice.
So yeah, like it's a ton of fun. I really think platformers have like I don't know if they've evolved very much over the course of gaming in terms of like my lifetime. Like of course they've gotten bigger, they've gotten more mashups and whatnot, but it's like they've been really consistent in my life. So it's like it doesn't seem like much has changed to me, but if I look at things objectively, of course things have changed. Like comparing Super Mario Odyssey to Super Mario Brothers 1. It's like, yeah, no, there's no difference there. It's a Mario game. That's stupid. That's like ridiculously short-sighted.
Yeah,
it's just it being this constant thing that I've held in such high regard unconsciously. Like I was just like, yeah, I'm just playing games. But for a long time, my playing games was just playing platformers. Platformers have, again, I said it when I started this rant. Everything. Platformers have meant everything to me, and it was this conversation that helped me realize that it meant everything to me, and it still means everything to me.
Oh yeah, because there's a lot of great platformers in general. But OneOneTwo, what about you?
So, both 3D and 2D, but especially 2D for me, platformers have sort of been the genre that has impacted how I go about life, and I truly mean that. I know that seems hyperbolic, but like platforming games especially have taught me how to work for something, how to learn something in a very in-depth, analytical manner, and especially the types of games that I play, like these more hardcore action games, have taught me sort of how to analyze things, how to understand what the game wants me to do and how I can do it without necessarily holding my hand. Mm-hmm. And I truly feel that that's sort of pervaded for me throughout my entire life. And with games like Mega Man and games like Contra and Blaster Master and Mario and etc. have truly taught me that sort of ethic that I put into everything, which is to learn as much as I possibly can and to showcase that in order to both help others and myself. Because one of my favorite things personally is helping people through games that I know inside and out. I've done this a lot on like Discord and whatnot, where people would stream Mega Man games and I'd sort of be in the back seat pointing out a few minor things that they, if you're dying a lot here, here's one thing you can do to help you throughout the game. And sort of giving pointers, but not necessarily giving them the answer. And I truly feel that platforming games is one of the genres that does that best, and that it gives you the tools you need, but expects the player to know how to use them. And I feel that platformers as a result are highly replayable because of that, because there's so many different ways to go about it. But like pretty much every platformers in general are shorter of a genre than most others. That's not always true, but I would say most platformers you can beat fairly quickly. And I feel like that's because of the fact that they expect you to play them multiple times for various reasons, whether it's to explore levels in different ways, whether it's to use your variety of weapons, whether it's to play with multiple people or just by yourself.
Yeah.
And I truly feel that platformers in general have sort of been that bedrock, steadfast genre since the beginning up until now, and pretty much for the rest of video game history. That crux, that sort of granddaddy of video games, that sort of influences everything to an extent. I will say that one of the most disappointing things in video games, at least in my opinion, is the fact that I feel like platformers don't have I don't want to say they don't have as much relevance as they used to, but I definitely feel that other genres have sort of taken the forefront to an extent. Mm-hmm. And I am glad that there are certain studios, certain genres that are keeping the sort of old school 2D action that I love alive, like Capcom, like Konami, like Sunsoft, like Inti Creates, and like Nintendo. And that there are still, and a lot of indie studios especially. I love that the indie scene has grasped onto these 2D platformers and made a ton of them to keep the genre and the experience alive and modernizing it and updating it while still acknowledging what the roots of it are. And because of that, I feel like platformers are something I can share with people much older or much younger than me. Because it's not necessarily hard to get into, but it's often incredibly difficult to master, and there's so much to discuss and talk about. I talked about it before before the show started, but truly being an administrator on the Mega Man subreddit has been one of the best parts of my life, honestly. Helping this community in a way that has a tangible effect on a large number of people. Yeah. And I truly feel that the platforming genre in general has a lot to owe for me for that. So I'm with OddHour. Platformers are everything to me, and I think they always will be. sure, my gaming tastes have evolved a little bit, but I don't think I will ever get tired of just running and jumping and shooting for some games. And I truly owe a lot of my sort of my the way I think, the way I act, and the way that I talk to others and help others. I feel like I owe a lot of that to platformers, and platformers are awesome. And I hope that many more people get into it, and I hope that it can keep that pedigree for the rest of video game history.
Okay, yeah. Because honestly, for me, when it comes to platformers, I have started with it. Obviously, is like NES. NES era was full of platformers, but for me, I started with it, and I kept going with it like throughout practically all my life. And I will still play platformers whenever I get the chance. There's still some more I need to play. There's still a lot that I want to play again. But for a lot of these games, you're never going to get that feeling again of playing for the first time. You only get that once in your lifetime, and that's it. Just being like amazed at how the game actually is. Like having that first time playthrough for Mario 64, you're never going to get that again after you beat it for the first time. But that said, for me, the reason it means a lot to me is because, like, just no matter what time of my life I'm a part of, good or bad, platformers have always been there for me. It's like comfort food in a sense. Like whenever like you just want to feel better, like you just eat something that makes you feel better, platformers are always there. You play them and you feel better, like whatever, regardless of whatever's going on with you in your day. Honestly, I have a lot of like really great experiences playing all these games, no matter which company that made them and how they actually played, type of mechanics, strengths, weaknesses, and everything about them. 2D, 3D, I'll play them as long as it's a lot of fun for me to play. There's just an enjoyable amount, like way too many, just to list all of them. But the ones that we did list, I know that I'm probably going to be forgetting a lot, and I know that people in the chat all night have been listing some really good games, and I appreciate everybody that listed a lot of great games in general in the chat throughout the entire night. So again, thank you for that, because that's great.
I did promise, I promised myself before the stream started, and I haven't brought it up yet, I promised myself that I mentioned Journey to Silius at least once. That's one of the best soundtracks in any game, and it's on NSO, so please play it. But yeah, there's such a variety of games, and I'm sure I'm going to forget a few things, a few platforming games that after stream would be like, I should have mentioned that. But yeah, as you said, the variety is insane.
Yeah, yeah. There is a comment that I do want to highlight because I think it's definitely worth highlighting. This is from Cutie Caitlin. She says, "Good games don't exist." No, but for real though, like great games in general. So many classics in general that I've grew up with and still playing to this day. Yeah, platformers means a lot to me because like they've always been there for me, especially in times of need. And they'll always be there no matter where I go in my life. But that's just about it. So before we close things up, OneOneTwo, where can we find you?
So as mentioned before, you can find me a lot on the Mega Man subreddit, which is at reddit.com/r/Mega Man. We have a community of about, I think it's like 55,000 at this point, though I'd have to check the member count again. You can also find us on Discord at discord.gg/Mega Man. We talk about not just the platforming games. We mentioned Classic X, Zero, and ZX, of course. Mm-hmm. But if you want to talk Legends, Battle Network, and Star Force, all the extra media, the fan games, everything, that's the best place to do it, in my opinion. I've helped that community for 5 years, and I'm very proud to be an administrator there.
Okay.
I also, of course, want to shout out my Twitch channel, as Shell put in the chat, twitch.tv, I keep forgetting that, /OneOneTwo. You spell it out first, and then you put the numbers. I stream a lot of action games primarily, but other games too, as Shell said at the beginning of the stream. And yeah, if you want to talk about any of the games I mentioned on this stream, please do, because I really like platformers, if you couldn't tell. Yeah. And I love talking about them. So please do talk to me about them anytime. I will do my best to respond.
All right. Very nice. Like, yeah, definitely go check out OneOneTwo if you haven't yet. Because they do really good streams with platformers, action games, sometimes RPGs, and sometimes anything out of the norm, but go check them out. So OddHour, what about you? Where can we find you?
You can find me at mostly my Twitch channel. I stream there 4 days a week. Used to be 5 days. On Wednesdays now we stream on YouTube. That's youtube.com/she/oddhour. But mostly you're going to find me on Twitch. Yeah, and like echoing what OneOneTwo said, if you want to talk to me about any of the games mentioned here, if you think there's a game that I should play, you can bully me a little bit into playing Sonic. I'll probably do it. If you say it twice, I'll probably do it like tonight. Like I'm very impressionable, and I love talking about games. So pop into a stream, come say hi, and let's talk about games.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. As Cutie Caitlin says, play Sonic Origins.
Sonic Origins, please.
I knew that was coming. I as soon as you said that at hour, my first thought was, I know exactly what Caitlin is going to say next.
Yeah, she ended up just saying that. I'm highlighting in the chat, like, so people can see it on the screen. Play Sonic Origins, play Sonic Origins, play Sonic Origins, play Sonic Origins, play Sonic Origins. You gotta. I mean, I haven't got it yet either, but I'll eventually get it. It's just there's just so many games out now that I'll eventually do. But yeah, so you could actually find me at ShellshockPrime here, like basically it's just any social media in general, like ShellshockPrime. That's where I'm at. On like Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and all that, Discord, whatever platform. That's where I'm at. You can talk to me about like practically platformers or any type of genres of video games in general, and any other video game topics. You can talk to me about any of that, and I'm always there. I'm always down to chat. Just shoot me a message, and then that's all you do. But thanks to everybody that tuned into the stream. Thanks to everyone that tuned in to this episode of Sharing with Shellshock. I'm gonna figure out exactly what next week's episode is gonna be and who's gonna be on it. I'm gonna figure that out soon. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's gonna do it. So take care of yourselves, and you have a great night.
Bye everyone. Fight for everlasting peace.